Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. A while back, I had posed the question on Instagram to my followers there. What is a question that you would like me to address on my frequently asked questions series? And so today, that is where I am getting my question from. It's actually a question that more than one person asked me, and that is, how can I help my reluctant learner? You know, when you're a parent of a reluctant learner, sometimes it can feel like you are the only one that is going through that. But to be honest, it's really common to have kids who just seem like they are fighting tooth and nail against any sort of learning. And that can be really hard, especially for a new homeschooling parent, but any homeschooling parent. It can be hard to have a child like that because it's a huge responsibility to take on the education of your child. So when it seems that they're not cooperating with you, it can really be a stressful situation for you. So today I wanted to just share with you some ideas on how to help your reluctant learner. So first of all, you really need to figure out where this is coming from. And so a lot of the things that I talk about today will actually be similar to what I talked about in my videos about if your child doesn't like homeschooling, or I actually have a video called Help My Child Hates Being Homeschooled. So some of the things might actually be similar to that, because you really need to think about where is this coming from? So the first thing that you need to ask yourself is, are you moving too quickly, or is the material that you're using too advanced for your child? Now, some clues for that might be that they are getting stressed out very easily, they are cranky, maybe being reduced to tears, sometimes outright refusing to do it. And yeah, there are kids out there who will tell you point blank, this is too hard, I don't understand. And I think that when your kids do tell you that, you have to listen to them. Yes, sometimes kids will say that just because they don't want to do it. But if your child is really being insistent that something is too hard for them, listen to them, slow things down. That is just one of the great things about homeschooling, is allowing your child to learn at their own pace. Now, a similar question, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, is, are you moving too slowly, or is the material that you're using too simple? Kids all learn on their own timelines. So if your child seems bored, if they're whizzing through things, or if they're really just telling you, same as with before, this is too easy, or this is boring, that might be a clue that you need to kind of amp things up a little bit. And really, it's just about watching your child. Another question that again is related to those first two that you can ask yourself is, especially if you have a younger child, you can ask yourself the question, are you expecting too much too soon? Now, in this day and age, you have students who are in kindergarten who are now coming home from school, their first week of school, with homework. And actually today, when I was at church, the people in my life group, there are some teachers and ex-teachers in the group that I'm in. And today they were actually talking about the fact that kindergarten is the new first grade, and how kindergartners are now expected to do homework their first week of school. They're expected to be writing complete sentences. And my thoughts on this are an entirely different video, and which I will come out with sometime. But even the teachers that were in my group today, they were not happy about this, because they understand that younger children don't need to be pushed in that way. So you need to ask yourself that. Are you pushing your child too quickly? Are you expecting too much from them? And I could even say children who are even up through like 8 years of age really learn best through play. So you need to keep that in mind. So the next one is, are you including your child's interests? I understand that when you're homeschooling, you can't always have everything be about what your kids are interested in or what they like, but Are you ever including their interests? Are you doing your best to see to it that they're learning about the things that will catch their eye? Because, one of the great things about homeschooling is that even though most states will tell us what subjects we have to cover with our kids, they don't tell us specifically what in those subjects has to be covered. So yes, you have to cover science, but they don't tell you what in science that has to be covered. If your kids love to learn about marine life, then by all means learn about that for science. If your kids are all about Little House on the Prairie, then by all means do that for history. You are not bound to following any sort of syllabus from the school district. You can tailor your child's education to fit their interests as well. So the next one that I have for you, the next question to ask yourself is, are you taking their learning style into account, or are you doing school at home by default? And this is something that will happen a lot to newer homeschoolers, and they just kind of start off doing school at home, the textbook style, sitting at the table style of learning, just because that's all they know. And so when you hear the word homeschool, you a lot of times you hear that school part of it, when you should really be focusing more on the home part of homeschooling. And that's why I actually said in another video that I did last week, home education is probably better, or home learning. But yes, you definitely have to take your child's learning style into account, because like it or not, most children do not do their best with the school at home method. Children just were not created to sit down at a desk for hours and hours every single day doing paperwork. That's not how they learn. I mentioned earlier that they learn through play, but they learn through hands-on learning. They learn through creativity. They learn in such a huge variety of ways. So watch your child when they're in their spare time. See how they go about doing the things that they like to do. Do they like to do lots of stuff with their hands? Do they like to read a lot? Are they very physical, maybe running around a lot, jumping on the trampoline? Watch them and try to incorporate their learning style into their homeschool day as much as you can. Now, another question that you can ask yourself is, are your lessons too long? Because again, that's kind of part of going back to the default of school at home. You kind of think to yourself, well, each period in school, in a traditional school, will typically be maybe about 50 minutes, 45 to 50 minutes. That doesn't mean that your child's lessons have to be that long. The best thing that I have ever done in our homeschool, okay, not the best thing, one of the best things, because there are a lot of things that have really been awesome for us, but one of the best things that I ever did in our homeschool was to shorten our lessons and to realize that if my kids are paying really close attention for the first 10 minutes and then for the next 20 minutes their eyes are glazing over and they're fidgeting around, then that means that really only those first 10 minutes are what really counted. So why would you insist that your child learn or do lessons in a subject for 30 to 45 minutes if you know that you really only have their attention for like the first 10 or 15 minutes? So that's another thing that you need to ask yourself. Are your lessons too long? You do not need to follow the school model. Another question that you can ask yourself is, are your lessons interesting? And I know that I used to use workbooks with my kids when we first started. And I remember the reading comprehension workbook was so boring. And I used it with my kids because my kids were using a reading comprehension workbook at school. Again, I did the same thing. I started out with the school at home model because that was how I thought that it always had to be done. But I remember sitting with my kids as they're doing these reading comprehension workbooks, and I used to think to myself, I don't even find this interesting. I don't even want to answer these questions about this passage. How is my fourth grader going to do this well? And so, yes, you can keep your child's learning fun. Yeah, there are going to be some things that they don't really like to do very much, but try to incorporate some fun things into your homeschool as much as possible. Learning can and should be fun. So the next question that I have for you to ask yourself is, are you taking breaks in between their lessons? You know, you don't need to start your homeschool day and then just finish everything off in one shot, or either work for 2 or 3 hours until lunch and then work again until you're finished. You can take breaks whenever you see that your child needs to. You know, even if it's after just one lesson, it really is gauged to the individual child. Now with me, my kids will usually get a break maybe around the first hour or so after we have started doing our schoolwork, but that's because we have a large group of kids, and you know, it just kind of works better for us for me to do the breaks with all of the kids at one time, because then they like to play together. But this is something that you can watch your child for, see what they need. But no, you don't need to work for huge increments of time before taking a break. Take a break whenever your child needs it or whenever you need it. So here's the thing. Sometimes you will find that your kids, even if you go over all of these questions and you find that you have done all of these things and you are just racking your brain trying to figure out why your child doesn't seem to want to apply himself, or why they seem reluctant to learn about anything. But you have to remember that if your child is new to homeschooling, for example, if you first pulled them out of school, or even if you didn't, even if you have always homeschooled, some kids like to test their boundaries. And yeah, this is a good way to do it, by them refusing to do their schoolwork. And you know what? The thing is that sometimes you need to put your foot down with your kids, and you need to explain to them that you understand that not everything that they are doing is something that they would choose to do, but that in the long run, you know that this is something that will be beneficial to them and something that they will need. And you know what? They're going to thank you for it. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one over on Instagram, because YouTube disables my comments. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave that link in the description box. And today I would like to give a shout out to another Patreon patron, Julie. Thank you so much for being a patron. I think you've been with me almost from the beginning of me opening my Patreon account. So thank you so much for the encouragement, and I love to interact with you, and I hope you all have a great day.